Okay, in an effort to confuse every iCLONE user, I'm going to try a tutorial on the little dingy room you just saw. So let's get started. I've got a little iCLONE avatar for reference purposes. Kind of get the size close. I'm going to pick a Genetica texture, let's say. I'm going to hold down the Control key and drag into the stage of iCLONE, and there we can have a object already textured and ready to go. So that's a big help, and let's click on that and let's rotate that if we can. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and see if I can get 90 degrees. There we go. And hit the R key and scale that texture up. That'll be a floor. That's a scalable texture, which is always a big help. And let's just adjust the scale a little bit on that object. And let's go with about a 3 or so. And we can play with that later. Okay, another thing I like to do is, since that's a floor, I don't need it to cast a shadow, and that's what's going on right there. So I'm going to go up here and adjust the display and say turn off the cast shadow. It'll receive a shadow, but it doesn't need to cast a shadow, and that'll save a little resources for your system maybe. So there we go, and let's scale that a little more, a little wider. And so now we've got us a floor, let's say. Let's do a wall and go back into our folder, and I've got some images from cgtextures.com. That's a great resource for textures. Let's grab, I'm going to hold down Control again, grab a texture, drag it to the stage, and that can be a wall. And let's just scale that up to an approximate reasonable size. And I want to rotate that texture because I want the top at the bottom, let's say. And let's hit the rotate tool, and there we go. And let's hit the E key, hold down the Shift key, and see if we can get 90 degrees. That's pretty close. And let's slide that over there for a wall. Now let's go ahead and use maybe one of the built-in objects from iCLONE over in the template content manager, floor and wall and floor, and here's an object looks like a doorway and a wall. So let's drag it to the stage, and it looks a little small doorway for our character there. So let's rescale, hit the R key, and scale that a little higher, maybe a little narrower, and let's texture that with this texture. Let's select that wall, grab the paint bucket, and drop it on that object, and that's a little strange there. Let's get rid of the paint bucket. I haven't figured out how to get rid of the paint bucket, so let's double click the object. That's not really aligning up quite right to that object, so let's go down to the UV coordinates here. Planar, let's hit the apply to refresh. That's weird. Let's hit the Y, and there it goes. Now it seems to be scaled correctly, and front and back seems okay. And that'll be a wall. Let's get a door, drag it out, and there's a door. The door looks to be about the right height for a door, but I'm going to scale that wall again, as it were, and so let's drag that, hit the R key, and get the height of that wall a little better, considering the door. And the width looks, let's see, that's going to look pretty close. You'll probably want to get another object and make a door frame to make it look a little more realistic, but for our purposes now, this will be fine. Let's select a texture map for the door, and I've got a folder here with some doors in it. I'm not going to hold Control down this time. I'm just going to drag the texture over to the door from the folder, and there we go. But it's, once again, not oriented correctly, so let's play with our options here and refresh, and there we go. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and use the right mouse button, spin around the object there, and it looks like it's textured correctly. Okay, very nice. You're probably going to want to rotate the door, and if we try to rotate, it's pivoting on its center. Not exactly right. We've got to change the pivot point. We have to orient the pivot point to the world axis, and the world axis is right here, and it's little tick marks in the middle of your scene. So let's move our door and align the right side of the door, which is where I want the hinges to be. And let's see if we can align that door to that pretty close. And now change scene root of the door, hit the E key, and there we have the gizmo operating correctly, and the door seems to be working correctly there. So let's slide it into the doorway. Probably going to want to attach the door to that wall, so let's attach pick parent, click on the wall, and now when we select the wall, the door moves with it. If we try to select the door, we can't do it. We have to go over to the scene manager, hit the E key, change to the rotation tool gizmo. Now the door seems to work properly, and that's very cool. Okay, now let's add some more angles to our room. I like to have as many planes as possible, and so let's go over here to blocks, and let's just grab a cube, a block there, and then let's stretch it out a little bit, and whatever, and stretch it so it's tall, and let's move it back to the door. And so now we've got an angle there. Let's steal a texture once again from our wall and get the paint bucket and attach. And once again, it didn't quite align correctly. To get rid of the paint bucket, I have to select the dropper, it seems. And let's now go down with that cube selected, go down to UV. And since that's a box, let's change it to a box. Let's try the Z-axis and apply, and that hit it just right on the money. And there we go. Let's duplicate that wall object, that cube, and let's hold the Control key down, drag, and we've made a duplicate. So let's do that. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and use my right left mouse button to rotate around. Do some cool stuff. And let's scale that up. And let's scale that up. And there's our wall with some angles and things in it right there. Getting close. Let's make a back hallway wall. Let's just duplicate this wall here. Once again, hold Control down, drag, we have duplicate. Hit the E key, hold down the Shift key and rotate, try to get a 90, there we go. And now a W there, and let's hit this. And now we have a wall. And let's get a different texture for that wall. Let's go down to our Explorer and let's look at our walls. And here's something interesting. Let's just, once again, you don't have to hold Control down. We're just going to drag the texture onto the surface of that object. And there it is. So now we have a wall texture on the back wall of our room. Okay, looks like we've got our hallway wall set up, and let's add some windows, let's say. Let's look at our pre-built textures, and they've got something kind of close here. So let's bring that in. Got a couple of holes for a window maybe. So we'll get something from Google Warehouse maybe and put a window in. And let's once again steal our texture from this wall here and grab the paint bucket. And once again, get rid of the paint bucket, click our wall there, and let's go down to UV and reset those textures. There we go, got it. Okay, did go to Google Warehouse and found some cool window frames, casement windows. Here's one here. Let's drag it over, and let's use this window. I've retextured it a little bit and got it. Brought it in using a 3D Exchange. So let's rescale this wall and get it, see if we can get it fit that window a little better. Click on the window and drag it up, and click on here and drag it a little bit. Click on the window. Good idea to get those keyboard commands. I'm holding the Alt key down and using my right and left mouse to move around. Okay, and yeah, we're pretty close there. I think we still need to scale a little bit. Let's hit the R key here. Window key, and get the windows set in there. And getting closer all the time, up a little bit, and up a little bit. And window with the W key. And looks like we're in pretty good shape on the window, fitting into the window opening in this particular wall. I want to tweak it down just a little bit. Don't want any light cracks for light to leak through there in case we put our light outside the window. Okay, there's a window there, and let's just once again hold down the control key, drag another window to duplicate that and put it into the other opening, and hold down the Alt key again, spin around with the right mouse, and that's pretty close. Let's re-angle the wall and rotate it. Let's select, let's parent our windows. That's what we want to do. Let's parent the windows to that wall so we can move the wall without separating the windows. So let's attach that window to that wall and parent that window to that wall. And so now if we rotate our wall, the windows will move with it. And so let's slide that into place. And you know, those windows look a little high in case we wanted to have our avatar walk over to a window. So, you know, if they were down about this level, it'd be a little more realistic. And ideally, you'd want to build a wall in a 3D program and get it exactly right. But I'm trying to work with these objects. So let's just rescale that. I'm not worried about what's below the floor there. The windows are going to stretch a little bit, but that's not too bad. That doesn't look too bad. Let's stretch it out a little bit this way. Okay, there we go. I think that'll work for our wall. Now our texture is not quite right, so let's once again select the wall, make sure that texture is selected, and let's talk about changing the tiling offset here. Let's here we go, and as we squeeze that, notice what's going to happen here. Here we go. We're adjusting that value on the V, and that's about right. So let's do that. Once again, we're not really worried about what's below the floor here. And I'll just tuck it up to that section of wall there and move it over some. That's okay. And let's take this section of wall, hold down the control key, and drag another segment of a wall here. And let's go this way with it. Once again, make some shapes and planes for shadows to fall across, just so it breaks up the wall. And there we go. Okay, so we've got some windows. You'll probably want to have an extra wall for this area. Usually I have the camera maybe here, but sometimes you want the camera coming through the doorway. You'd want to see that wall. So let's duplicate this wall. We'll call it a flying wall. Most studio sets have flying walls, and the cameras can move in when they need to and put the wall out of the way when the camera needs to be there. So that will then work as a wall on that side of the room. Let's slide it out of the way for now. Don't need it. Getting close. Let's create a ceiling. And let's just once again hold down the control, drag the floor up, and remember we turned the shadow casting off. Depending on where we put our light, you might want to turn shadow casting back on, and we'll turn it back on for our ceiling. For now, we can always turn it off and change the color of it too, of course. So there's our ceiling, and we can scale it if we need to, but it's not too important. Hopefully the camera won't be seeing that direction, seeing off the walls. Anyway, we're concerned with the room. So there's a room. Now I think we're pretty much ready to put some props in there. Okay, let's put some props in our room and go over. I've been collecting props for a long time. Got a few odds and ends, so let's grab a chest of drawers here. Put it over there. Let's go ahead and zoom on in here. Let's drag that out. It's the wall, and let's put a bookcase here. And let's turn that around. Don't like to worry too much at this point about getting everything squared exactly, so it looks a little off, not perfectly aligned, let's say. Got a fun object here I got in Poser a long time ago with Radiator, and I added some particle steam from iCLONE to it, and so it will emit some steam while things are going. Radiator, I probably want to get closer to actual square, so let's do that. Everything else will be set up. Let's put the radiator over here by the wall. And, there we go. And if we run some animation, you might be able to see the steam there. You can't see it with this light right now. Okay, and let's think about putting up maybe a table. Here's a table I got in Poser a long time ago. And we'll stick it over this wall here. Once again, holding down the left key, using my right mouse to spin around, holding the Alt key down here to do that. And kind of fun. Oh, one little object I built the other day. It's a little fan. It's kind of cool. I built that in Modeler, Lightwave Modeler, and then I brought it through Exchange to bring it into iCLONE, and it rotates and oscillates. Kind of cool. Scale it up a little bit. And let's rotate it. Might get a neat shadow if I put this light outside the window there, maybe. Let's see if you can see that running. There we go. Fan's running and oscillating. That'll be cool. And so just go about populating the room with props, objects. I think I've got an old bed, iron bed I made here. And I'll stick an old iron bed in there. And let's bring that up correct. And something along in there. Be cool. And so just populate things like so to your liking. This one thing I kind of wanted to do was stick a poster on the walls. Some posters. I had some posters, images that I grabbed a while back. Let's take a look here. It's kind of a cool poster. I turned the shadow already off on this. It doesn't need to cast a shadow. And the way I'm going to use it, I'm just going to kind of plaster it on the wall. So let's do that. Stick it on the wall here, maybe give it a little rotation so it's not perfect. And another thing I'm going to do is take the opacity down so it kind of looks like it's been there a few years and not quite as sharp and crisp. I don't mind a little bit of the wall showing through it. Just kind of makes it look a little more weathered possibly. But that might be a cool effect too. So just kind of go through the room, put your props in there, put some posters on the wall, dress it up, and get real close. Okay, I think we're ready to put some light in our little room here. So let's scroll down and look at our lights and see what we can do. Got spotlights and point lights. I'm going to keep this light for now, and let's just call it work light. And it'll be nice. I'm going to turn off shadow, but it'll be nice to have as a work light whenever we get our other lights on and be able to turn something on bright. Let's turn it off for now, and let's label one sunlight. That'll be our key light. I'm going to turn it on and give it a value. I want to warm it up like the sun, maybe. Warm sunlight coming into our room. Let's say OK. I'm going to turn on shadow, turn it on, and there it is. Okay, I think I want to make that a spotlight instead of a directional light. Have a little more control over a spotlight than you do a directional light. So there it is, and it's casting a shadow. And let's think about using it to light through the windows. So let's drag it out to our window and get it roughly in a position. that might work. And let's come around. Since our windows are translucent, should be getting some sun through there, and it's kind of coming through, but it's not casting any shadows. So let's make sure shadows are turned on. That's correct. We've got drop shadow. Let's turn it to self-cast shadow. That should help, but it doesn't really help us. So let's think about adjusting the threshold. Threshold kind of works with our transparent objects, and now you can see the light is coming through the window and casting a shadow of the window frame. Let's adjust the opacity here to get a nice dark shadow. That helps a little bit. And so now we've got light coming through our window casting a shadow. So that's kind of cool. And I think we can even begin to see our fan there working some. Yeah, on the floor. So cool. That's the beginnings of our light. Let's think about some other adjustments. I'm going to work at a low resolution for now, so things will move along pretty peppy, but when we get ready to render, I'll crank this value up pretty high so it gets the maximum quality of shadows. They're kind of blocky and grainy. Okay, that's one light. Let's look at our ambient light. It's a little bright, so I'm going to turn it down and make it a little blue. I want my shadows to be a little bluer. So, whoa, that got real dark, real fast. But that's going to help us with the mood, maybe. Let's think about adding another light in the room. And once again, let's turn it on and give it a warm value, like an incandescent light bulb, which are disappearing every day. And let's just make it a spotlight as well. Let's hit the E key and make it a spot and cast it in the room, and that's looking kind of cool. And let's adjust some values. We have decay, that we can adjust the intensity there on the range, and let's think about the angle of the light and the fall off. Makes those edges kind of soft. Don't want to negate the sunlight coming through the room, but we definitely want to bring up the light inside the room, and we can tweak that some more as we go along. But for now, we've got a basic light in the room. Let's think about putting a light here in the hallway. And of course, we're limited on lights that cast shadows in iCLONE, but we can use a point light. Point lights don't seem to cast shadows, but they will make a light source. And so let's give it another warm value, and we'll think about putting one of these lights out in the hallway. And there is our light. It's over here. Let's kind of drag it out. It kind of is a what we call a brute light. It pretty much casts light everywhere. Hard to control, as you can see. No shadows. It's kind of like a fill light. But you do have a couple of parameters you can change. Let's adjust decay and the range. Let's take the range down, and let's see if we can get that light back into the hallway and light up the hallway without lighting up the room. As you can see, it's kind of lighting up the room. So if we adjust that value on the range, we might be able to keep it from lighting up the room. Let's turn off our room light. I want to call that a room light. That other spotlight we did. Okay, and let's turn it off. Now we can kind of see what that light's doing back there, that point light. And just light up that wall back there, and let's get that range down a little further. Okay, now it's not lighting up the room at all, just the hallway, and let's call it hall light. Okay, now we've got a hall light on there. So those are the basics. Let's turn this other light back on, and for the room. And let's get the basics of our lighting set up. Okay, one other little light thing you might want to try is put a gobo between the light and your set and your scene. And that's anything that just goes between the light. And we're going to use a tree as a gobo. And let's just pick a tree with lots of foliage, small foliage. And we will let it cast a shadow. And since we're not really going to see the tree, possibly from certain angles, just size it kind of small and get it to where we position it between the light, and you can see it's starting to cast shadows on the floor and on the wall maybe at some point. So you just have to kind of tweak it, move it around, see what's going to work for you. And when that starts blowing, it's a real cool effect to see that dappling light on the floor with the tree that's moving. And neat effect. So just position that in your frame, and that'll be a cool effect, I think, once you get it tweaked just right. And that's pretty much it for lighting. I'm going to do a little more tweaking, add a few more props, and then we'll take another look at the finished product. Okay, so here's the final room. Added, of course, some more props, some more items I've made and collected, and obviously some Google 3D warehouse props that really look great, and tweaked it. Got the light just kind of where I want it, and there's some more posters, and the steam's going, the fan's going. We added a little TV there, which I kind of built just the other day in the Lightwave Modeler. So there it is. Hope you enjoyed it. It was fun.